Hello everyone, welcome back. Sorry I didn't make a video at the weekend. I'm firmly in the camp that if I don't want to make a video, I won't. So, there. My channel, and I'll try if I want to. Anyway, today's topic is based in the realm of philosophy, and it's based around a discussion I had on Twitter with someone. I hope you enjoy it. I haven't made it yet, so I hope it's going to be good. Here you go. I've said in the past, in previous videos, and I hope for yours and my sake that it's true, that when thinking about a topic it's a good idea to think about a question first, and that leads to further enlightenments on a particular topic. So I was having a debate on Twitter with someone, and the question was asked, if there's a mass of gas, doesn't matter whether it's near a star or whatever, but if there's a mass of gas in space and it's vibrating, is it making a sound? I'm going to pause the video and I'd like you to put your answer here now. Okay, so this can be analogised to if there's a tree and it falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound. It's a sort of philosophical question. You all know it's very stereotypical, and I'm ashamed to bring it up almost, just because everybody knows it. It's a bit like, why did the chicken cross the road? Which is a fantastic joke, by the way. It's a shame it's the first joke we teach children. So yeah, we can analogise that to the tree falling down the forest, but we can also analogise the tree falling down the forest to the question, if there's a red object and there's nobody looking at it, is it still red? Now this is very interesting as a question, because it's not as cut and dried as you might currently be thinking that it is. So, it's all based on definitions. As always in philosophy, definitions become very important. Redness. What are the properties of objects that we perceive as red? Well, for the most part, they reflect the majority of the photons that they reflect are in the 650 nanometer wavelength scale. That is to say, the wavelength of the photons is 650 nanometers long, and we would perceive that as red. That's fine, but is that redness a primary property of the object? And I'm going to give some arguments as to why and why not. The first argument could be that it's not actually the object that's red, it's just reflecting redness from the sun. So maybe it's the sun that's partly red, and it's just moving the redness from that to you. Now this isn't very relevant to our sound question, but it's interesting nonetheless. Is the object actually red? Because it's the photons we perceive. So maybe it's the photons that are red themselves, and not the object itself. The object, it's just doing a thing. It's just making an action on the photons to come to us. So maybe the object's not red in that manner. Secondly, our perception of redness is very cultural, in fact. Let me give you an example by changing the colour to blue, say, or green. The Japanese have no distinction between blue and green. They're considered the same colour, so you have to say blue like the sky or blue like the grass. In the same way, don't you think it's a bit weird that we separate red and pink as separate colours? The Russians do a similar thing with blue and light blue. They're considered separate colours within that culture and that language. So that's very interesting. Our perception of red might change were we colourblind, like me. I'm green deficient colourblind, right? So you might say something is green and I might say it is red. So that property is subjective then. And if that property is subjective, then is it really real? Are subjective things real? Are they the reality? Is that therefore a property of the object if it's entirely subjective and up to debate? A synesthetic person even, redness might be related to sound for them. They might hear something and hear it as red because of synesthesia. Now they might hear the sound as well, but they would associate redness with that object because of sound and not because of light. So when the subjective perception of the object as red goes away, then can the object really be said to be red anymore? Because there's nobody to say that it's red, because it's subjective. Someone has to be making the argument that it's red. Whether it's just, you know, subconsciously or whatever. They don't have to be saying that, I think this object is red, therefore it's red. Like, we know some objects to us are red. If we're in a world full of blind people, would redness even exist? What about a race of dog people who are only seeing black and white? They'd be able to detect the photons because they'd have the ability and the visionary perception to be able to develop the technology to detect the photons, and they'd know that it sends out photons at 650 nanometers. But they wouldn't have this concept of redness, they would just have this concept of which photons are reflected by the object on the electromagnetic scale. I mean, they might in the same way, you know how we define this really small band of wavelengths as different colours, and the rest is all X-rays and gamma rays and stuff like that. These concept of colours just wouldn't exist. You just have sort of regions of realms. Now I know what you're saying, maybe redness could be defined as the ability to send out these photons, and that's fine. So maybe what we're getting at here is in fact a language barrier. When one person says redness, they might mean the ability to stir up the sensation of the colour of red within the majority of humans. Or maybe they mean redness as in just sending out this particular wavelength of light. So it's not as cut and dried as you think. When someone isn't looking at it, if we consider redness to be a subjective thing, then it would go away. But if we consider redness to be the ability to start this sensation by sending out this particular wavelength of photons, then it can be said to be red. So it is, I would argue, for the most part, a language thing. It's what you define redness to be. And this choice of language and definitions is going to be subjective as well. You're going to have some people that say redness is this and redness is that. So it's not one way or the other. It's very interesting. Fundamental questions like this, not as cut and dried as you think. Fun times had by all. I'll see you at the weekend.